Have you ever said yes and immediately regretted it? Like the word came out of your mouth and your soul was already filing a complaint. Congratulations! You just volunteered for something your entire nervous system voted against. If you've ever wondered, why can't I say no? Anxiety may be part of the reason. Because sometimes saying yes is not kindness. Sometimes saying yes is fear in a nicer outfit. Fear of disappointing someone. Fear of conflict. Fear of being judged. Fear of seeming selfish. Fear if you say no, something changes. So your anxiety steps in like, no problem. I'll just sacrifice your peace to keep everyone comfortable. And in the moment, saying yes feels safer. The tension drops. The other person is happy. You avoided the awkward moment, but then the bill comes due. Now you are overcommitted. Now you are resentful. Now you are stressed. Now you are dreading the thing you agreed to. And somehow you're mad at them, even though technically you said yes. That is the trap. Anxiety gets relief now, but you pay for it later. You avoid 10 seconds of discomfort and trade it for hours, days, or sometimes weeks of stress. Fantastic exchange rate, terrible investment. And this is why people pleasing can be so exhausting. You are not just managing your schedule, you are managing everyone's reactions, everyone's feelings, everyone's expectations. And eventually you start abandoning yourself just to avoid disappointing someone else. So if saying no feels weirdly hard for you, you are not broken, you are not weak, and you are not just too nice. Your brain may have learned that keeping other people comfortable is the safest option, even when it costs you, even when you don't want to do it, even when part of you is screaming no. In this video, I'm going to show you why anxiety makes saying no feel dangerous, why saying yes can become a fear response, and how to start taking your yes back before anxiety gives it away for you. Here's the part most people miss. The problem is not that you don't know the word no. I am guessing you've heard the word before. Tiny word, 2 letters, very popular with toddlers. The problem is that when you try to use it, your anxiety treats it like a threat. Not a preference, not a boundary, a threat. Someone asks you to do something. Maybe they ask for a favor. Maybe they invite you somewhere. Maybe they add one more thing to your already full plate. And before you even think about what you want, your brain starts running the danger report. What if they get mad? What if they think I'm selfish? What if this makes things awkward? What if they stop liking me? What if I disappoint them? And suddenly a normal request has turned into a full hostage situation inside of your skull. That is why the yes comes out so fast. It's not always because you wanted to do it. It's because your anxiety wanted the danger to stop. The yes becomes a safety behavior. It lowers the pressure. It avoids the reaction. It keeps the peace, at least for the next 7 seconds. But here's the problem. Every time anxiety says yes for you, it teaches your brain the wrong lesson. It teaches your brain that saying no was dangerous and saying yes saved you, even when saying yes made your life harder. So now the pattern gets stronger. Someone asks, you feel pressure. You imagine the reaction, you say yes. You feel temporary relief, and then later you feel trapped. You feel annoyed. You feel drained. You feel like nobody respects your time. But the brutal part is, anxiety already handed your time away before you even got a vote. And that is where resentment starts. Resentment usually shows up when you keep saying yes on the outside, but inside you are screaming no. You are not actually okay with it. You are not actually available. You're not actually fine. You just performed fine because fine seems safer than honest. And over time, that wears you down because now you are living with 2 versions of yourself. The version everyone else sees, the agreeable version, the helpful version, the sure, no problem, I can do that version. And then there's the private version, the exhausted version, The irritated version. The version sitting in the car thinking, why did I agree to this? That version deserves legal representation. So the goal is not to become rude. The goal is not to stop caring about people. And the goal is not to turn into some boundary robot who replies to every text with, unfortunately, that does not align with my capacity. Please do not become that person. The goal is to stop confusing kindness with self-abandonment, because those are not the same thing. You can be kind and still say no. You can care about someone and still have limits. You can disappoint someone and still be a good person. And that last one is usually the hard one, because anxiety loves to act like disappointment is danger. But disappointment is not always danger. Sometimes it's just a normal human reaction to not getting exactly what they wanted. And if you cannot let anyone feel disappointed, then you will keep volunteering to carry discomfort that was never yours to carry. The part that even makes this harder, that people pleasing can look good from the outside. You look helpful. You look dependable. You look easy to work with. You look like the person that always comes through, which sounds great until everyone starts treating you like a 24-hour emotional convenience store. And now the thing that you were praised for becomes the thing that drains you, because every yes has a cost. Sometimes it costs time. Sometimes it costs energy. Sometimes it costs sleep. Sometimes it costs focus. And sometimes it costs your ability to trust yourself. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, a little part of you notices. It notices that you did not protect your time. It notices that you ignored your own limit. It notices that you abandoned yourself to avoid someone else being uncomfortable. And your nervous system is sitting there like, cool, so we don't matter here. That is why this pattern does not just create a busy calendar. It creates resentment. It creates dread. It creates anxiety before the thing even happens. Because now you're not just doing the thing. You're doing the thing you did not want to do after pretending it was no problem, while secretly hoping everyone somehow knows it's a problem. Which is a bold strategy. Terrible communication plan, but bold. And this is where people get stuck. They think the resentment means that other people are taking advantage of them. And sometimes maybe they are. But sometimes the resentment is your own boundary trying to get your attention. It is the part of you saying, hey, this does not work for me. This is too much. I did not actually want this. I need to stop agreeing to things just because I am scared of the reaction. And I want to be clear. This does not mean that every yes is bad. It does not mean helping people is wrong. And it does not mean you should turn every relationship into a courtroom drama. Although knowing anxiety, it may already have the opening statement prepared. The problem is not saying yes. The problem is when your yes is driven by fear. When you say yes because you're afraid of being honest. When you say yes because guilt is louder than your limit. When you say yes because anxiety convinced you that someone else's disappointment is your emergency. That is the cost. You do not just lose time. You lose the feeling that you're allowed to choose. And when you lose that, life starts to feel like one long list of obligations you never agreed to. And technically you did agree to them, which makes the whole thing even more annoying. So before we talk about what to do instead, you have to catch the real moment where the pattern begins. It does not begin when you're already angry. It does not begin when you're already exhausted. And it does not begin 3 days later when you are rage cleaning the kitchen because someone asked you to bring the dessert. It begins in that tiny moment before the yes. That little pressure spike, that little panic, that little fear if you pause too long, they will know you do not want to do it. As if your hesitation is going to show up on a federal background check. That is the moment we have to slow down. Because if anxiety can rush you, anxiety can answer for you. And if anxiety answers for you, you are probably going to be the one stuck living with the consequences. The most important moment in the whole pattern is not the yes. It is the moment right before the yes. That tiny gap where your body already knows the answer. but your anxiety is trying to negotiate a plea deal. And somehow you're both the defendant and the attorney. Someone asks you for something, and before you respond, there's usually a signal. Your stomach tightens, your chest gets heavy, your shoulders tense, you feel that little rush of pressure, and your brain starts looking for the fastest exit. Not the honest answer, the fastest exit. And the fastest exit is usually, sure, no problem. But that little pressure spike is important. It is not proof that you have to say yes. It is not proof that saying no is wrong. It is a signal that anxiety has entered the conversation. And once anxiety enters the conversation, you need to stop letting it grab the microphone, because anxiety is a terrible spokesperson. Very passionate, terrible judgment. So the first skill is not saying no perfectly. The first skill is pausing. You have to create a little space between the request and your response. Because if you answer too fast, you may not be answering. You may be reacting. You may be escaping discomfort. You may be trying to calm the room, which is sweet, but also exhausting. So instead of answering immediately, buy yourself time. You can say, let me check my schedule. You can say, let me think about that. You can say, I need to look at what I already have going on. And here is the key. You are not asking for permission to think. You are giving yourself permission not to be rushed. Revolutionary concept. Apparently, adults are allowed to consider things before agreeing to them. That pause may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being instantly agreeable. You might feel rude. You might feel selfish. You might feel like you're creating tension, but you are not creating tension. You are noticing the tension that was already there, and you are refusing to make your entire life the solution to it, which is rude only if your job title is human doormat. After you pause, ask yourself one question. Am I saying yes because I want to? Or am I saying yes because I'm afraid of what happens if I say no? That question cuts through a lot, because sometimes the answer is yes, I want to help. Great, that's a clean yes. But sometimes the answer is no, I do not want to. I am just afraid they will be upset. I am afraid they will think I'm selfish. I'm afraid this will feel awkward. And awkward is apparently the final boss of the people-pleasing nervous system. When that is the answer, you have found the real issue. The issue is not the request. The issue is the fear underneath the request. And once you can name the fear, you stop treating the yes like your only option. You can still choose to help, but now it is a choice, not a panic response. And that matters, because the goal is not to say no to everything. The goal is to stop saying yes before you have even checked in with yourself, because your life should not be run by whoever asks the fastest. Now let's talk about the part everyone wants. How do I actually say no without needing a legal team, a crisis plan, and 3 hours of emotional recovery? The first thing to understand is this. A good no does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be harsh. And it does not need a 14-paragraph explanation. Some of you are not saying no. You are submitting a full legal brief with exhibits, receipts, and a closing argument about why you're still a good person. That usually comes from anxiety, because anxiety thinks if you explain it perfectly enough, no one will be upset. But that is a trap, because now your no becomes a negotiation. You give people openings. You give them details to argue with, and you accidentally teach yourself that your no only counts if the other person approves your reason, which respectfully is a terrible policy. So start with a clean no. Simple, kind, clear. You can say, I can't commit to that. You can say, that does not work for me. You can say, I'm not available for that. You can say, I need to pass this time. That is enough. Not emotionally satisfying to anxiety, but enough. And that is the whole point. You are teaching your nervous system that you do not need to over-explain to have a boundary. You do not need to convince someone to earn a no. And you do not need to make your limit sound impressive enough to be respected. Now that will feel uncomfortable, probably, especially the first few times. Your anxiety may act like you just resigned from society. But discomfort after saying no does not mean you did something wrong. It means you did something unfamiliar. And your nervous system is trying to pull you back into your old pattern. This is where a lot of people undo the no. They say no, they feel guilty, they feel anxious, they imagine the person being upset, and then they rush back to fix the discomfort. Actually, I probably can make it work. Never mind. I'll figure it out. No worries. Please ignore the boundary I briefly just tried to have. That is the part you have to practice not doing. Not because you're trying to be cold, not because you do not care, but because every time you rescue yourself from the guilt, you teach anxiety that guilt is dangerous. And every time you let guilt be there without obeying it, you teach your brain something new. You teach it, I can feel guilty and still be allowed to have a limit. I can feel anxious and still not overcommit. I can disappoint someone and still be okay. That is the real work. Not finding the magic sentence that makes everyone happy, but building the tolerance to let someone maybe not love your answer, which is annoying, but apparently necessary. And here is another important piece. You do not need to start with the hardest no of your life. Start small. Start with a pause. Start with, let me think about it. Start with, I can't do that today. Start with, I need to pass this time, because every clean no is a rep. You are not just changing a habit. You are training your nervous system to learn that a boundary is not a threat. It is information. It tells people where you actually are, what you can actually do, and what you are no longer willing to sacrifice just to keep the peace. Because peace that requires you to disappear is not peace. That is just anxiety with better branding. Now let's make this practical. A healthy boundary does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be cold. And it does not require you to become someone that says, that does not align with my energetic availability. Please do not become that person. A healthy boundary is just honest information. This is what I can do. This is what I cannot do. This is what works for me. This is what does not work for me. And when anxiety gets loud, it helps keep the words simple. I can't commit to that right now. That doesn't work for me. I'm going to pass this time. I can't take that on. That is enough. No courtroom presentation, no 14-paragraph explanation, no emotional PowerPoint about why you're still a good person, because the more you over-explain, the more your no becomes a negotiation. And the more your anxiety learns that your boundary only counts if someone else approves it. But here's the most important thing. The sentence is not the hard part. The hard part is surviving the feeling after the sentence. The guilt, the anxiety, the urge to explain, the urge to take it back, the urge to send a follow-up text explaining your entire childhood. Please do not attach the memoir. The discomfort is where the pattern changes. Every time you feel guilty and do not undo the boundary, you teach your brain something new. You teach it that guilt is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. You teach it that disappointment is uncomfortable, but survivable. You teach it that you can still have limits and be a good person. So do not start by trying to become fearless. Start by pausing before the automatic yes. Ask yourself what you are afraid will happen if you say no. Give a clean answer, and then let the discomfort exist without handing your boundary back. My name is Vinnie Merz, and I am a high-performance anxiety coach. I help ambitious professionals stop anxiety from sabotaging their success, their confidence, and their peace of mind. And if this pattern is running your life, it does not just make you busy. It makes you resentful. It makes you dread commitments you agreed to. It makes you anxious before things even happen. And eventually it teaches you to stop trusting yourself, because part of you knows you keep saying yes when you mean no. Part of you knows you're trading your peace for someone else's comfort. And part of you is exhausted by pretending it is all fine. So if you keep saying yes to avoid discomfort and then spending hours or days feeling resentful, anxious, or trapped, this is exactly the kind of pattern we can work through in coaching. Because the real work is not just memorizing a better sentence, it is understanding why saying no feels dangerous to you in the first place, what your anxiety thinks it is protecting you from, and how to build enough self-trust that you stop abandoning yourself just to keep everyone else comfortable. If you want help with that, you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me. The link is in the description. We will look at what is driving the pattern, what keeps repeating, and if coaching is the right fit for you. Because your yes should belong to you, not to your anxiety.